have two gentlemen from the Norristown Times-Herald, Mr. Ed Kelly and Mr. Joe Owens, came up here today to help us put our newspaper together. They're going to talk to us about what reporters do and exactly how a newspaper goes together. So let's give them a nice big hand and let's give them our best attention.
Thank you, class. I'm sure Joe feels the same way. Thank you. Let me first start out by saying that a career in the newspaper business is one of the most fascinating, interesting, fun jobs you could ever imagine. But it's not easy, you know, because you have to live with your mistakes, you have to see them in print, and that's why it's so important that if you do choose this field, that you become responsible journalists. And by responsible journalists, we mean people who are going to take the time, the effort to research information, make sure that information is factual, and above all, make sure that information is truthful. Because it's very easy in this business to write something about someone that may be based on half-truths and have that come back and haunt you for a lot of years. Not only you, but it could ruin the career or careers of the people that you're writing about. So, really, there isn't a lot to writing for a newspaper, but there is. It's time-consuming, no question about that, and you really have to be dedicated to wanting to write and to putting your best efforts forward. Do you have anything to add?
What we're going to do today, like Ms. Palumbo said, this is Ed and I'm Joe. Ed's going to tell you a little bit about what he does for the Times-Herald. He covers the police beat for the Times-Herald, which is keeping track of the activities that the police do in the different townships in our area. Your own police department's here. I wouldn't know which one it is here. Norristown or East North. And I work in the courthouse for the Times-Herald. Does everybody here know where the courthouse is?
Yes.
All right, in the middle of Norristown. And I cover mostly criminal court. That's the people who get arrested by the police that Ed covers, come into the courthouse and have their day in court, as it is. And we're going to show you a little bit. Ed's going to show you some of the things that he's done in the past, and we're going to show you how we follow up on stories about people that are arrested with what happens to them in the courthouse when they come to court before a judge. And Ed's going to go first and tell you a little bit about the police.
Let me just start by depicting how to write a basic news story. Give you the bare things, and then you can we'll give you examples and something of our background so that you can maybe write a story yourself. It's very simple. The thing you have to remember about writing a news story is putting the most important facts first. This is called inverted pyramid. And it's broken up into three categories. First is your lead. Second is your body. And the third is the summation. Or
Extra facts.
now, the lead is the most important part of your story. It's very easy. The thing you should remember about writing a lead to a story is keeping it short, concise, and to the point. You get your most important facts up front. Take, for instance, about a month ago, I'm not sure if you're all familiar with this, about 10-year-old Mark DiGregorio was stabbed on East Marshall Street 10 times or 9 times or something. Well, that was a pretty big story for our paper. And the major thing about that was that it was unprovoked and it was done by an adult on a young kid. So that's the type of thing you want to get in your lead. Short and concise. The body of your story should contain other facts. Where it happened, what time, age, background of the person involved, what was going on that day, witnesses, quotations, stuff to make it more interesting. And finally, the last part is filler, as it's known as in the business. It just, if you have other things that you want to just tie your story up,
Quotes are important.
and maybe about something that's going to happen in the future, such as when they arrested the man.
Or charges, what happens next if someone is arrested and they are in custody of the police. You have to tell people what the next step is for them in their criminal charge, whatever they are charged with, where and when the next court appearance, or if they make bail, you know, if there is bail set. This is all for police news. And the reason why I think police news and criminal activity is reported and is important is because people like to know what's happening in the areas that they live in, you know, your neighborhoods and the neighborhoods of a lot of other people that live in the area that we serve. If something of major proportion happens in your area, we want to find out about it and tell you about it. So that's why we don't try to make criminals appear to be good people, because they're not. But when something happens that affects a lot of people or affects an area, we have to report it and let you know what's going on.
That's right. So that's basically police news. One story that Joe and I both worked on that was of major importance recently came to a conclusion. I'm not sure whether you are familiar with the trial of Roger Peter Buell, who was charged with the multiple murders of Cortland Gross and his wife and their housekeeper. Okay. When that story broke, which is another term for saying when that story first happened.
When it happened, when these people, this is a man, in case you haven't heard about it, this is a guy who was accused of killing 3 people last July in Villanova, over in the other part of Montgomery County. Ed is going to show you something that he wrote the first day. This is a first day story to tell you what happened. His story tells you what happened, who was involved, and, well, he's going to show you.
I'll just pass this around, but this is the first day story that the Times Herald ran. And you can see they devoted almost 1/3 of the page just to this story because it was of major importance. This man was one of the pioneers of aviation history.
Airplanes.
Airplane history, everything. Lockheed Corporation, he was the co-founder of Lockheed Aircraft Corporation, and a multi-billionaire in his own right.
Millionaire.
So what happened was, it happened on a Friday afternoon, and I was sent to his estate. When I got there, the place was mobbed with media people, television, newspaper reporters. Everybody was standing around. You couldn't get 100, 150 yards within the house. They had it blocked off.
They own a big mansion in Villanova, and they lived in their mansion, and the wife and the husband and not to create horror stories, were shot and killed. So the police were there, and as Ed said, media people trying to find out what happened, who it happened to, what's happening next. Do they have any suspects? Everybody know what a suspect is? All right, someone they believe to have done a crime.
So what is so imposing about something like that is being faced with a crush of people who were trying to obtain the same information as you are. So it's really your job to go out and seek whoever it is to talk to, the most important man on the scene, the police chief, the coroner. The coroner is the man who pronounces people dead. Anyone who you can talk to who's in authority, and that you can get quotations from him that can stick, which means that when it runs in the paper, it's legitimate. So what happens is, when you see all these people, you just can't stand around. You have to move around, talk to people, talk to witnesses, talk to the people who lived in the neighborhood. Ask them about the Grosses. Ask them about the people that were dead. or that were killed. Just your job, basically, is to gather as much information in as short a period of time, and then decipher it all and write a story about it. So, for a long time after that murder, information was kept at a minimum, at best.
Because they didn't know who did it.
And police were not giving out any information about the death or anything like that. So it was very difficult to write stories. But then, as things started to open up, they were able to piece together a series of events. Police were able to piece together events which placed a suspect at the home of Cortland Gross. In a short time, months later, they arrested someone named Roger Peter Buell. That's where Joe picked up.
Well, between the time that this incident happened, I said it was in July, I think the date's on there, it was the 17th or the 16th. The police, the Lower Merion Police, this was in Lower Merion Township, had a suspect. That they said that they had a suspect, and they released sketches. Police sometimes release composite sketches that you might see on TV or in newspapers. Eventually, they apprehended someone, arrested him. As Ed said, his name was Roger Buell. After that, he had his arraignment, was the first court appearance that he had. Well, actually, it was a preliminary hearing. Okay, there's a long step of court hearings that you get before you actually go into a trial. But the end result was he did come to Montgomery County Court in the courthouse down in Norristown, and they had to pick a jury. This here is a short story with a picture of the defendant who was charged in this case. And this is one of the earlier stories of his trial from when they were picking the jury. Everybody knows what a jury is? A jury of 12 people sits, and they're the finder of fact in a law case. They are presented the evidence, and the jury decides what is fact and what is not. Okay? This is when they were in the middle of picking their jury. I'll send this around. And this is the end result. You see here the page 1 story with the top of the page about the murder. When the case is ended, when the case goes into the court and is ended, and a result comes out of it, it's called the disposition of the case. Okay? This was the disposition of the case, which just happened last Wednesday. And, well, this is last Wednesday's paper. Page 1, I'll pass this around also. This man was charged with murder of the first degree, which is the most serious crime you can be charged with in the state in the criminal court. And the disposition was the jury had to decide whether, after they found him guilty, they had to decide whether he was going to get life imprisonment or the death by the electric chair, which is what they have in Pennsylvania. And as you can see, like I said, that is Ed's story, because he covered the police. When it happened and the police were involved in it, investigating it, he was sent out to cover that. When they came into the courthouse, I covered the trial, and this is the end result of what happened. I'll pass this around to you. Here.
But hard news like what Joe and I write is only one facet of the newspaper business. A newspaper business will be nothing without a good photographer and also good feature writers. Sports, of course, always sells newspapers, but as far as the news end is concerned, feature writing is a little different from hard news writing. In hard news writing, you want to get the facts up top, you want to be concise. With feature writing, now's the time for you people to start developing an imagination. Well, I'm sure your imagination is fully developed at this point.
Creativity.
But feature writing is based on creativity, like Joe said. You want to use your imagination. You want to let your mind be free of everything, to open up to everything around you.
That's not to say that you don't also look for facts and print exactly what is happening whatever your feature is. We're going to show you some feature stories that we've done. But with a feature story, you can find the facts, and you don't necessarily have to put them right on top, where that's the first thing you can read, but you can lead into them and make it more interesting, make it a smoother type reading story where people enjoy reading, rather than not everybody enjoys reading about police
Right.
Arrests and triple murders.
And that's very
So-
important, the fact that you can make something interesting, because if you write something and then you go back and read it yourself, if it's not interesting to you, it's not going to be interesting to anybody else. So the main thing is to be creative in such a way that it makes people want to read your story, you know? And it's important to, when you write a story, to go back over it time and time again, looking for mistakes, trying to make one sentence better, trying to make a long paragraph shorter. Importance of grammar. And the Bible of our business is this thing right here.
Whenever you are using a word in a story that you are not sure about, you can still use that word, but you go right to that and find out how it's spelled and what it means. And the next time you go to use that word, you'll remember it, and it'll help you out. The dictionary is very important.
And believe me, there is nothing more embarrassing than seeing your story in print with typographical errors and spelling mistakes. I mean, it makes you feel this big. It's terrible. It ruins your credibility.
The way of preventing that is by being careful. Like Ed said, reading everything that you write, because if you can't read it, then no one else is going to be able to read it. So spelling and grammar are very important. Should we get into
Yeah, let's give them see if they can write a story down.
Okay.
All right?
I just want to, I'll pass this out also. This is a feature story that I did about the beginning of November. This was about a man, this is also out of the courthouse, all right? It's about a man who was a county detective, and then when the chief of the county detectives retired, he became the chief of county detectives, which is a very high position in Montgomery County in the courthouse. So we wanted to do a story about him to let people know what kind of man he was and what his background was. And there's a picture of him in there with the district attorney who lives in this area, I think, Mr. Smythe, and his name is
Smythe
Oscar.
is a coal manor parent.
Yes. Oh, okay. Mr. Smythe is a coal
That we
manor
all
parent,
know.
all right? And there is a picture of Mr. Smythe. Two pictures of Mr. Smythe.
But I think you're getting a little tired of hearing us rap. So, let's see how good writers you are, okay? I'll give you a police report blotter. Just bare facts, information, and see if you can write the story. Okay, this 84-year-old woman reported to police. She's an 84-year-old woman. Say she lives in the 1000 block. That's another thing. When you're writing stories about people, news stories, police stories, stuff like that, it's always best just to use the 1000 block that they live in. Never use the exact address, because you never know what kind of strange
You
people
don't need
are
to
out
put
there.
in your story, like, if you live on the 800 block of Main Street, you don't have to put 808, that's your address. Tell them exactly what house, you can tell the block, because it's not always good to tell people where they, exactly live.
Okay, she reported to police that two men rang her doorbell on the night, say Tuesday, January 17th, if that is Tuesday. On the night of January 17th at 7:30 p.m., two men rang her doorbell and said that they were policemen. No, I'll put it down for them. So the police report, the police blotter read something like this.
Colombo says that you're going to have your own newspaper in this classroom. Is that right? Does it have a name yet?
No.
No name yet?
They had some suggestions.
Some suggestions?
You had one, right? School. What? Whole Manor Times. We had Buzz and Steve, but I think that's... Oh, that's... Oh, okay.
We're going to talk a little bit about your paper when we're done this year.
Okay, that's the basic facts. Do you want me to read them? Can you read them? Okay, so Mrs. Thomas Jones told the police that two men rang her bell, showed her a badge, and said, "We're policemen doing a survey in the neighborhood." When she opened the door, one of the men knocked her into the kitchen, knocked her onto the ground, and then two men tied a scarf around her eyes and ransacked her home with $100. Now, police gave she gave a description of the men that it's for your purposes, it's not, worth going into. So, the thing you have to do is start with your lead and make that your most interesting paragraph. But in your lead, you don't have to put everything in the kitchen sink. I mean, you don't have to put the woman's name, the woman's age, the woman's occupation, where it happened. Just something short like...
Just the thing is, this is what we're asking you to do here is, you're all police reporters, okay? You all cover the police beat, and you went to Norristown Police Station, and they gave you this information. They told you that last night this happened to this woman in her home, and they tell you where it is, and you copy down all the information that they give you, and that's the information that they gave you, okay? Take that information, decide what's most important, why it's most important, and then you decide what you're going to do with it, how you're going to put it together, and find, start from there. Take the most important fact, because it's a news story, that happened last night, all right? That's another important thing. You have to say when, all right? There's when, why, what, where, and how, okay?
Go ahead. Are you done already? Oh my. Great. That was the all up. Yeah, that's a good idea.
Okay. Okay. While you're doing that, I don't want to distract anybody, but if you're done, you can look here. If you're not, you can keep writing. I just want to show you, there's a lot of people don't know exactly how a newspaper is put together, in the sense that what's put on what page and how it's done, okay? But that's decided every day by...
Hold up on this. We'll tell everybody's done. This is interesting.
Okay, other people that
A lot of people still write.
All right, I'll wait. We have time.
wrap up. You've got 3 more minutes.
And don't think that the story necessarily has to be long. It can be short, 2, 3, 4 paragraphs at the most.
Are you going to have them share it?
Well, yeah, we'll pass it
You
out.
will?
And then, like,
Yeah.
with my style of writing, I'm not so sure about Joe's. Joe's probably much the same way, but what's most interesting or easily readable to the adult eye or any eye are short paragraphs, usually 1 sentence long, because it keeps people's attention longer. With 1 paragraph, they're not straining to read 30 different things.
You don't want to give them too much information
Right,
all at once.
you don't wanna
because you only
clutter up
have
the
a
thing.
certain amount of information, and in some cases you have to fill out, make it read properly. It has to flow. There has to be a flow
Yes,
to the
sir.
story where it won't feel strange going from one paragraph to another. You feel at ease reading, and it flows in one way.
That's called a transition. When you make a transition from 1 paragraph to the next, it really shouldn't be 2 exactly opposite trends of thought, if you can understand that. Like, you don't go from saying in 1 paragraph, this person was stabbed, and then the next paragraph say, his charges were.